And
Thank you so much for having me on your program, and it's just my privilege as well.
so me and a few others especially me, I know a lot about you, about your research. I've listened to many of the interviews that you have been uh, in, especially on Coast to Coast and a few others out there. But for the few that may not know who Norio Hayakawa is, explain to the audience a little bit about yourself and how did you get interested in the fringe, the paranormal, and just mysteries out there.
Well, it goes back to around early 1950s when I was growing up in Yokohama, Japan. And when I was growing up, my father used to tell us about his strange sighting of a greenish ball of fire slowly maneuvering over the bay of Yokohama, Japan, one summer night in 1947. One summer night in 1947. And he used to tell us about his sighting of this intelligently maneuvered greenish ball of fire. And so I grew up in that kind of atmosphere. Although at the dinner table, my father used to tell me, and I was just a small kid, my father used to tell me and my mother and my sister, but of course, my mother was kind of skeptical. But anyway, that's the very beginning of how I got into the subject of UFOs. But at that time, in the early 1950s, they didn't call it UFOs. They just called it flying saucers. And the term UFOs came out later, and it was a misnomer. It was an absolute misnomer. And so today, um, even the military and the Pentagon doesn't want to use the word UFOs, but rather they would use the word unidentified aerial phenomena. Because, first of all, we're not sure if it's even an object, and we're not sure if it is even flying, as flying that we understand through propulsion systems. So it's a misnomer. So I'm glad that finally the Pentagon decided to use the word UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, instead of object. But anyway, I grew up in that kind of atmosphere. And in 1961, when I was just in high school, and of course, this was also back in Japan, when I was in high school, I began to join organizations that researched this strange phenomena, the UFO phenomenon. So that's 1961. And ever since that time, I really dedicated my life into study of this strange phenomenon. And it even goes up till today. So that's basically my uh, long history in a nutshell. But what really got me fired up took place in 1964. And at that time, I was studying at a university in Tokyo, Japan. And in 1964, in the month of April, I think it was around April the 25th or something, but
24th or 5th. I think I know where you're about to go with that because this is probably my top favorite. You said 1964 and already knew what you was about to say, but I think you're right. 24th or 5th.
yes, in fact, I'm talking about around the 25th because around that time, around that 25th, I was just reading some newspapers, English language newspapers in a college lounge. And on that day, I was just flipping through some newspapers, and one English language newspaper had a very fascinating article in the middle of the page, front page, by the way. And it wasn't a big article, but it was just kind of a medium sized article. And the headline in that small article said, police officers seize saucers sitting on sand, and it was dated April 24th, 1964, from a place that I never heard before in my life, and that was Socorro, New Mexico, USA. And this was about how this state patrol officer by the name of Lonnie Zamora witnessed a strange looking, oval shaped, a shiny object just sitting on the sand on tripod. And he witnessed that thing from a distance, from only about 400 feet away. The reason why he came to that location was until a few minutes before then, he was chasing a high-speed car outside of Socorro, and suddenly he heard a loud explosion in the desert, and he stopped chasing that high-speeding car, and he went towards the desert, and Lord behold, in the desert, only about 400 feet away, there was this shiny, oval-shaped, egg-shaped object about maybe 1.5 times the size of a vehicle. And it was just standing on tripods, and he was so astonished. But a few seconds later, he noticed that the hatch of that object slowly opened, and out come 2 small entities dressed in white coveralls or something like that. And he was perplexed by this incident. And a few more seconds later, these 2 entities realized that they were being observed 400 feet away by this Lonnie Zamora, the patrol officer. And so suddenly they went inside the craft, and instantaneously, Officer Lonnie Zamora saw the red burst of engine fired up from below the object, and this object rose up in the air, and suddenly it flew to the right side, and right away at a tremendous speed, it went towards the right side, way yonder in the desert. And he was so surprised because he noticed that it wasn't flying by that time. It seemed like at first it was flying, but it's more like at a tremendous rate of speed, but it was more like disappeared, dematerialized in the distance. And anyway, this was a very, very fascinating incident. And this incident is the reason why the following year, by strange coincidence, the following year, I received a scholarship from a college in New Mexico. And so I don't believe that there's such a thing as coincidences in our lives, but, this Lonnie Zamora incident was the factor that brought me to New Mexico to study in this college in Albuquerque. That was 1965. But I was so busy with my studies, and I didn't go down to Socorro at that time, but I regret it. But fortunately, in 2008, after my wife and I decided to leave California, because until 2008, I was living in Los Angeles, California. But anyway, after 2008, my wife and I decided to retire, and we came to New Mexico in 2008. So this time, I didn't forget about Lonnie Zamora. So right away, I made a phone call and spoke to this legendary patrol officer, Lonnie Zamora. I spoke to him on the phone, and he was a very polite gentleman, very kind, courteous, very, very nice fellow. And of course, by that time, he was a senior citizen. He was already retired from his police work. But he told me exactly as they reported. He told me exactly what happened. He told me in exact details what he saw. And he told me to come over to his house. And unfortunately, a year and a half passed away, and I learned that he actually died a year and a half later. But even to this day, I highly respect this man, and I believe 100% that he did see what he claimed to have seen. That is, an oval-shaped object 400 feet away and during broad daylight. Around April 26th or 27th, there were about 20 officers from Washington, D.C. that came to Socorro to investigate this whole incident, including J. Allen Hynek, who was one of the top American researchers because he was employed by the Air Force to study this kind of phenomenon. So J. Allen Hynek and many other officials came to Socorro and interviewed Lonnie Zamora for many, many hours. They stayed for a few days. They examined the location, the desert, the scorched bushes and all that. And they came to the conclusion that Lonnie Zamora did see what he claimed to have seen. And this case, the 1964 Lonnie Zamora Socorro landing case, is still considered to be one of the most reliable cases in UFO history, even now. So anyway, that was, what really inspired me to come to New Mexico. So I lived in New Mexico from 1965 to 1973, graduated from this college. And then later on, I moved to Arizona, spent time in Arizona. But then I decided to move in 1982 and live in Los Angeles, where I never lived before until 1982. So in 1982, I moved to Los Angeles, and coincidentally, again,
what made you want to move to Los Angeles?
Well, because when I was living in Arizona, of course, I was teaching Spanish in high school because that was what I majored in New Mexico at college. And so I was teaching high school Spanish in Phoenix, Arizona, but I got tired of it somehow. I decided to, believe it or not, I decided to join a country western band over there because I was very familiar with country western music and country western guitar licks and so on. So that kind of music, I wasn't too familiar until I came to Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1965. So from 1965 to in the 1970s, I became a very proficient in the guitar licks of country western music as well as Tex-Mex music. So I became a professional entertainer while I was living in Phoenix, and even traveled to Indian reservations in Canada, and then even traveled to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada and played music. But
they're actually pretty good. They're actually pretty good, Norio. For everybody that's listening or watching this, I will give the links to his YouTube channel in the description below. I'll also give a link to his website also, and go ahead and just, I guess just throw your website out there for everybody to go check out, because you have some really fascinating articles and things that you seem like you've had that website for a while. I kind of did some digging with that website today after you sent it to me.
Thank you so much. It's not actually a website as such, but more like my blog site, in which I collected many, many items that I thought were very pertinent to everything I've been saying. It's not only about UFOs and conspiracies and all other things, but also about the beauty of New Mexico. But anyway, the reason I went to Los Angeles, California, after getting tired of just playing in a country western band in Arizona, the reason I moved to Los Angeles in 1982 was to seek for some kind of a career because I was getting tired of my life. But uh, strangely enough, when I was looking for a job in Los Angeles in 1982, I went to, of course, an employment office, and the employment office told me that there was a job opening in Los Angeles in a special area in Los Angeles called the Little Tokyo area, where there were a lot of Japanese American businesses. So I went to this location to look for a job and knocked on the door, and lo and behold, unbelievably, it was a funeral home. And so there again began my new life as a funeral director. It's a long story, but from then on, I spent more than 30 years being a licensed funeral director. But coincidentally, it was in the funeral home that I heard about Area 51 and also Dulce, because I was listening to a radio talk show way late at night, after midnight. I was just doing something in the morgue of this funeral home, and I was, listening to a talk show.
Do you remember what year, and what
This was
talk show?
1989. Yes, this was 1989. I was listening to a talk show that I could catch in Los Angeles, but it was coming from Las Vegas. And the name of the talk show was Billy Goodman Happening Talk Show, which was the predecessor of Art Bell. And this was 1989. And, every night when I listened to this talk show, there was this guest who claimed to be a scientist working in a secret facility in Nevada. He said it was right by Area 51, which I never heard of before. But anyway, he was talking about how he was back engineering a spacecraft of some sort that was allegedly transferred from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the early 1950s, and which in turn had already been transferred allegedly from New Mexico from around 1947, 1948. And this was a fascinating story. So that was in 1989 while I was listening to that radio show. And that's how I got to know about Area 51. In fact, in 1989, I listened to that show and I was so fascinated, and I decided to write to a Japanese magazine in Japan, telling them that there is this amazing fellow who claims that he is working on a reverse engineering of a spacecraft of some sort. So anyway, the Japanese magazine sent me a writer to cover this story, but at the same time, they happened to send a team of a TV crew from a Nippon Television. So Nippon Television crew of about 6 or 7 people came along with that writer from that magazine, and we met in Los Angeles, and somehow we got to get some more information on this Bob Lazar fellow. And somehow we got the address, and we visited this fellow in Las Vegas. It was on Wednesday, February the 21st. Wednesday, February the 21st, 1990. We visited this scientist in his home in Las Vegas.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Norio. Yes. Did they come all the way from Japan?
That's right.
Wow.
All the way from Japan.
I've actually seen that. I've actually seen that interview or that video from, I guess it was, I don't remember what year, but I guess it's 1990. I saw it on YouTube, and I will try to also give the link to that. But the video of these Japanese, I guess, people that's from this magazine that came to talk with you, and I'm assuming you escorted them and gave them what, or told them what you knew.
That's right. So we did a 4-hour interview that Wednesday morning at his house in Las Vegas, and he didn't want to go with us that evening to this location. He just told us where to go. And it was on a Wednesday, and we chose the Wednesday because he was claiming that it was during Wednesday nights that they were testing this so-called craft. But anyway, that evening we arrived at this lonely, desolate stretch of land about 2 hours away from Las Vegas, and this was the Highway 375. And at that time in 1990, there was hardly any traffic over there. You would see 1 or 2 cars per hour in this desolate, lonely highway, and it was dark. But he told us that if we go to 29.5 mile marker area on Highway 375, you will see on the south side a mailbox, a black mailbox. And so he told us in Las Vegas that when you get there, set up new cameras and wait until the sun goes down. And lo and behold, after the sun went down, around 6:45, the first of the bright lights appeared suddenly from above the Groom Mountains that were covering Area 51. Because on the surface, on the level, ground level, you cannot see Area 51 because it's covered by a whole bunch of mountain ranges, including the Groom Mountains. But anyway, at 6:45, we saw a brilliant orange light just appearing over the mountain range, and it made a very fascinating movement, like sudden descension, like 5,000 feet in just about 1 second, and then continued its weird maneuver, and we were so impressed. So anyway, that was the beginning of my long year of research on Area 51, and
that also Norio also put you on the map, right? Where eventually, somewhat down the road, was whenever you start doing a lot of these interviews and your research. Was that pretty much the spark of, I guess, your research?
Yes, not only myself, but there were other folks around that same time that were beginning to do research and investigate Area 51, because at that time, in February of 1990, very few people knew about Area 51. And so, yeah, I guess we were very instrumental in telling people about Area 51. And by the way, eventually this Japanese TV crew produced a 2-hour program, and it was broadcast in March of 1990 and seen by 80 million or 100 million people, when at that time, most people in America had never heard of Area 51. But anyway, that's a kind of a basic storyline. But what was amazing was because not only did the Japanese TV crew and I go to that location in Nevada, but a week later, we traveled to New Mexico to research about this strange area that people were talking about. And it was the alleged Dulce underground base rumors and the strange happenings that were going on in this Indian reservation area in northern New Mexico. And the place was called Dulce, New Mexico, which simply means sweet, but actually the original name of Dulce was Agua Dulce, which means sweet water. But anyway, it became an Indian reservation in the early 1900s, but most of the residents who lived there were descendants of the Hispano conquistadores, the Spanish conquerors who came to New Mexico in the 1600s, and they intermarried local folks, and they're called Hispanos, the Spanish, descendants, but they were there. But then around 1900, early 1900s, the United States government created an Indian reservation in that area and brought many of the Apache people from elsewhere and created the Hickory Apache Reservation in the early 1900s. So by that time, by 1990, I was aware and I had knowledge of not only Area 51, but also Dulce, because the topic of Area 51 and Dulce came around at the same time. The reason is because by 1988, there was this guy named John Leader who wrote a hypothesis called Area 51 and Dulce.
I've interviewed him many times, and the late John Lear, he will be missed. He had some crazy theories, but man, he will be missed for sure.
Yes, no question about it, because he had a very important role in disseminating information about Area 51 and Dulce, New Mexico. But anyway, here's the bottom line, Michael. I have been involved in all of this. I took many journalists to the outer perimeters of Area 51 since 1990, many, many times. But later on, I began to realize that perhaps there was nothing alien about Area 51. And I came to believe that it was pure American technology. And so I still believe even now that there's nothing alien about Area 51, but it's a very important military research and development, program, R&D research facility for the, defense of this great nation. And so it's very important. Area 51 is very important. Now, as far as Dulce, New Mexico,
Norio, some would say, I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but I have to throw some things in. Now, some would say that technology, that Area 51, and I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not sure. Could it be aliens there, alien technology, or whatever? I don't know. Or could there be UFOs there? I don't know. We don't have any definite proof. But some would say that the technology that they are working on there, that are working at Area 51, is alien in origin. Now, would you agree to that hypothesis or not?
No, I'm skeptical that there's any kind of alien technology in Area 51. In fact, I am very skeptical that there are even aliens, and I'm talking about specifically extraterrestrial biological entities. There's not a single credible, physical, tangible evidence whatsoever, even to this day, that we have ever been visited by sentient extraterrestrial biological entities in any kind of extraterrestrial spacecraft of any kind. There's not even any kind of evidence yet. And this is very important, Michael. Yet, I believe that the phenomenon itself is real. I've visited many, many times to Dulce, New Mexico, and presently, of course, I live in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, and I made hundreds and hundreds of friends in Hickory Apache Reservation in Dulce, New Mexico. I have hundreds of friends over there, and I've visited there many, many times, and even to this day, I have yet to find any concrete, credible, physical evidence whatsoever that there is a physical underground biological collaborative laboratory with the United States in Dulce or anywhere near Dulce. Yet, as I said, there are people who still claim to see many times strange lights over Dulce. In fact, there are even a lot of people in Dulce, the Native American folks, who claim that they have seen some strange entities, that 8 foot tall entities, dark, walking along Navajo River right next to the Alchuleta Mesa, and so on and so on. And do I believe them? I definitely do believe that they did see what they claim to see. But the big question is, what did they see? That's the big question. And so I've been investigating this subject of UFOs for many, many years, many years. But I finally came to the conclusion, after many years of experience investigating this, that, as I said, there is no absolute, tangible, credible documentary evidence whatsoever that we have ever been visited by actual physical extraterrestrial biological entities in any actual physical spacecraft of any kind. And not only that, but as I just said a little while ago, that the term UFOs is a misnomer, because we still don't know if they are objects, nor could be flying as we understand flying to be by the use of a propulsion system. And then also, one of the preeminent characteristics of this strange phenomenon is its seeming ability to materialize and dematerialize at will. And this is very important. I found out also that another characteristics of this strange but real phenomenon is its apparent inability to remain in a physical dimension for more than a few seconds or a few minutes at a time. And this brings me to another point. Another important aspect of this strange phenomenon is its apparent inability to be photographed or videographed with clarity. So this is the reason why I have yet to see any clear photo of what I can say is a UFO. In fact, this is the reason.
Sorry, Norio, I don't mean to play devil's advocate. But the thing is, I tend to agree with you. We don't have 100% proof. We have some things that are, I guess, a lot of it's just conjecture and speculation. But a lot of people would say, and I tend to agree with this statement, what I'm about to say, is that people that do come forth with either information or evidence, they usually wind up dead. And I've been wanting to make a documentary on all the people that's the alternative researchers, doctors, people that are whistleblowers that have come forward or soon to come forward. They usually wound up dead, and usually they suicided themselves or just wound up dead in mysterious means. And if that's true, I don't know how much further that we can, or what needs to happen for us, I guess, in this community, Norio, for how can we get this evidence? Because I believe it's real. Just like you said, the phenomena is real, but we need to do something. I don't believe disclosure is going to come from the government or an alien landing on the White House lawn, because we'll probably shoot them down. But what needs to happen? Because obviously whistleblowers, people that may, like I said, may have evidence, physical evidence also, of UFOs or aliens or whatever, they usually wind up dead. But what other avenue could we take? What other approach could we take to?
Well, first of all, just like you, I do not believe that the government will ever disclose the true nature of this strange phenomenon, because the Pentagon and the military themselves are totally perplexed about this phenomenon. And a lot of people say the Pentagon is making an announcement next year, and they're going to disclose something next year. And they keep saying this every year, and nothing happens. All we get is some grainy photos or some very blurry videos of something that was taken from cockpit of a jet fighter, and so even to this day, we just don't have any kind of photographic evidence because these objects are, in my opinion, I'm just speaking my opinion, not 100% physical phenomenon, but it's a mixture of a non-physical and a physical, and I describe it as a paraphysical phenomenon. Now, I'll continue on to my last point. This phenomenon has an apparent ability to pre-select its observer or observers in advance, as well as time and location. And so this is a very important item because not everyone seems to be able to observe this thing. And it's only by luck or something, there's some mysterious circumstance that this phenomenon itself seems to be able to pre-select in advance who will see this thing and for what reason. We still do not know. We still do not know, but we must still continue to study this phenomenon. But let me explain to you why the United States government, the Pentagon, cannot say anything, because there's a deep division within the Pentagon and the military among the military, and it's divided. And this is because of their religious belief. Now, religious beliefs among military and those in the Pentagon, it plays a major role in many of these things that cannot be explained. And so, the government is not in the business of explaining anything that's non-scientific or cannot be proven by science. So it's bordering on what I call paraphysical phenomena, or some people call it paranormal phenomena. So this is the basic thing. My mother, who was a skeptic for many years, finally became a believer in 1975 when she and her grandson suddenly, but not the grandson, only my mother, but she was with her grandson. But anyway, in 1975, my skeptical mother claimed that she saw a flying saucer with a dome on top, just hovering instantaneously, momentarily, over a crowded train station as she and her grandson were coming out from the train and coming out from the station, going down the steps to the street. And the street was fairly crowded because it was around 11:30 in the morning.
She was the only one that saw this craft?
And so here's the thing, Michael. Something told my mother to turn around. Something told my mother to turn around. And when she turned around and looked towards the train station, Lord, above the train station, there was this flying saucer, a typical silverish flying saucer that you see in comic books or in sci-fi movies. Exactly that type of a flying saucer was hovering momentarily over the railway station, and she was so astonished, she turned around and pointed to grandson to turn around and look. And at that time, this thing completely dematerialized. And my skeptical mother finally became a believer in flying saucer. And I do believe in her observation that she did see what she claimed to be a flying saucer. But the big question is, what was that she really saw? What was that flying saucer? So it's still a wonder, even right now. And so when people talk about claiming to have been abducted in a flying saucer and were experimented upon And there are basically more than 10,000 people in the whole world that claim that they were being abducted by strange objects and taken aboard and were experimented on and so on. But my thing is that who are we to deny those claims of those individuals, because it was reality to those experiencer of this phenomenon. It was real, but my reality is maybe different from other people. Other people's realities are all different from each other. So we still have this big problem of what reality is. And so this is the reason why I still continue to study this strange phenomena and to study about why people believe in certain things, why people believe in, let's say, conspiracy theories, because, I've studied ufology and conspiratology for many years, and I came to the conclusion that, well, belief is a very strange, powerful thing. It can change society. And so we're living in a world right now which is filled with strange beliefs, many of which may not be based on real reality, but may be based on emotions, or maybe based on misinformation or disinformation. And so this is the reason why I keep saying that we are living in this age of conspiratorial beliefs, many of which are not based on reality, but many of them lack actual proofs. But yet, there are people who manipulate such beliefs of people for their own political advantages or for any kind of advantages that they want to use. So in America right now, there is a total division in America. And so I'm talking about those who believe in things that are not proven by science. And then there are those who believe in scientific approaches. So, Carl Sagan, who was one of the most brilliant scientific minds of the 20th century, Carl Sagan forewarned before he died that in the future, America will be a country, unless they do scientific studies and stress on the importance of science and scientific methods, unless they go this direction, the America will become a country filled with people who believe not in science, but rather in pseudoscience. And so this is exactly what's happening. In America, it's just absolutely, totally divided into two. Those who are based on scientific knowledge and those who rely not on scientific knowledge, but on emotionalism and pseudoscience and all this. Now, where does UFOs fit in? Well, UFOs fit in this sense that we must continue to study diligently about this strange phenomenon, but not get involved in off-tangent items such as certain kind of beliefs not based on science. And so there are so many crackpots in this field, in UFOs, and it's not limited to just regular people. There are many school teachers, college professors, doctors, professionals, scientists even, and even astronauts. They are not immune from uttering ridiculous statements. So in every level of society, there are crackpots. And the reason why is because people have a preconceived notion of things, and they bring in those notions and say something that's absolutely unverifiable and just based on emotions. And, you know, even there are some astronauts who are great astronauts, but when they come back, many of them come back from space, they seem to change somewhat, and they begin to reflect a lot of things. And so many times their consciousness seems to have changed. And so, you know, who am I to say this is right or this is wrong? But let me say that in the field of ufology, there are so many charlatans and crackpots. And even people who claim to be, have top secret clearance, they could be crackpots. You know, there's one fellow who used to be a defense minister of Canada, and many, many years ago, and during his time as a defense minister of Canada, he had no interest in UFOs. Only after he retired, he started reading UFO books, and overnight he became an expert in UFOs. And around 10 years ago, he started going in the lecture circuit, and he started claiming that, you know, there are aliens dressed as nuns and walking in Las Vegas, and so on. You know, why people make some of those strange statements, it's unbelievable, but people have a tendency to believe anybody who claims to have a top security clearance. Just because one person is a former defense minister of Canada doesn't mean that what he says is 100% true. Like I said, he read a lot of UFO books and became a believer many, many years after he retired as defense minister of Canada. And there are many, many people who claim to make some statements even right before dying. Deathbed confessions are not 100% reliable because you know, that's not where it is. Where it is should be very strict, scientifically proven facts, and not hearsay and other things. So, you know, I don't want to continue with all these negative type of thing, but my thing is that, yes, there are mysteries in this world. There are so many things that we don't understand, including the true nature of the UFO phenomenon, but ultimately it goes back to one's belief. And personally, as I consider myself a born-again Christian, but my personal belief is that, yes, there are, in this humongous universe, humongous cosmos, there are sentient beings that may not be physical, but they could be paraphysical, sentient entities roaming around in this universe and coming to our dimensions and occasionally materializing and dematerializing at will for some strange reasons. But not all of these folks have benevolent intentions. I believe that, from my religious viewpoint, at least 1/3 of the entire cosmic entities, sentient paraphysical entities, 1/3 of them seem to have malevolent intentions, and those are the ones that seem to be posing as highly developed extraterrestrial civilization folks, and posing as what a lot of global people think they are aliens. And, you know, I used to be a colleague of a researcher by the name of William Bill Cooper. And William Bill Cooper and I both shared one thing in common, and that is that the government could, in the future, stage a fake extraterrestrial type of event to artificially create some kind of panic by creating some kind of a fake extraterrestrial event in the far future to cause panic for the people to clamor for a united global government and military to protect us from this external threat. And Bill Cooper and I shared this thought together, and I still say that this is possible, but right now this world is so confused and so much in disarray. There's disorganization in the world. The world is in total chaos. There's no way that such a new world system will come about, at least in our lifetime. This world is going nuts. It's being divided into so many camps. It's being divided into Russia-China alliance and then NATO-European alliance. And many of the nations just don't know what to do. They remain neutral because they want to get food products from Russia and so on, and oil and so on. And then so this world right now that we're living is in total chaos. And there's no way that some kind of a new world order system can be established right now. It may happen, but in the far, far future. Yes, there are technologies that could produce these kind of fake extraterrestrial event, maybe on a local basis, but not on a global basis at this time. But, this is all about beliefs. And, I just strayed from what I wanted to say, but coming back to my final thoughts on this thing, we have to be careful not to be deceived by false information that's obtained from the internet. And, it's just that people are very gullible and they think everything on the internet is true. They just also spend lots of money and are being deceived by two big industries, and that is UFO industry, which is based on money making, and then the paranoia industry. There's this thing called paranoia industry in which certain businesses take advantage of people's belief in conspiracy theories and so on. Not that conspiracies don't exist. Yes, conspiracies do exist, and they have existed from time immemorial, because whenever two or more persons plan to cause detriment to another person or a group of persons, whether small or large, there is conspiracy already. So conspiracies have always existed, but there's a difference between conspiracies and conspiracy theories. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I am simply just a conspiratologist who simply studies the effect of conspiracy beliefs on society. And the same goes with UFOs. The UFO beliefs can affect society. And so any kind of belief can affect society. So, I like to end this, Michael, if you don't mind, by saying
Sure.
that it was such a tremendous opportunity for me to say some weird things like I've been saying, but I try my best to stand on my both 2 feet on the ground, yet trying to be open to anything.